Please stand. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Please remain standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Counsel Mercia. Counsel Milanazzo.
Here.
Counsel Rourke.
Here.
Counsel Samaras.
Here.
Counsel Belanger.
Here.
Counsel Elliott.
Here.
Mayor Kennedy.
Here.
Counsel Leahy. Counsel Leary.
Here.
8 present.
Council Samaras?
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. I'd like to darken the chambers and ask for a moment of silence for George N. Sapasaris, former Lowell Public Schools superintendent and educator for 40 years. Lifetime Lowell resident George Nicholas Sapasaris passed away surrounded by his loving daughter and son after a brief illness at Lowell General Hospital on Sunday, October 22, 2017. He was 86 years old. Born in Lowell, December 12, 1930, to the late Nicholas and Demetra Zaroulis Sapasaris, who both immigrated from Mani, Greece, George was one of 6 children. He was the beloved husband and dearest friend of Dorothea Gimos Sapasaris for 40 years, who predeceased him in 2010. George was raised in Lowell and attended the Bartlett School and Lowell High School. He received his Bachelor of Arts in History from Boston University and his Master of Education from the University of Massachusetts, Lowell. Mr. Sapasaris began his distinguished professional career in education at the Bartlett School in Lowell as a junior high math teacher in 1959 and then as an assistant principal. In 1980, he was elected to the role of project director for the Lowell Public Schools. 10 years later, the Lowell School Committee unanimously elected George as superintendent. Recognized throughout the Commonwealth as an outstanding educator, George's unwavering commitment to Lowell and dedication to its students for more than 40 years helped enhance the quality of education all children receive today. Following his retirement in 2000, George served as an educational consultant to the University of Massachusetts Lowell and the Lowell Public Schools. Additionally, he proudly served his country in the U.S. Army, where he rose to the rank of first lieutenant during the Korean conflict. He also owned and successfully operated a summer resort restaurant on Cape Cod with his brothers for nearly 20 years. Throughout his life, George was active in numerous professional community church organizations, holding meaningful leadership positions, and was widely recognized and honored by these organizations for his outstanding contribution and achievement as an educator. George is survived by his daughter Julianne and son-in-law Tim Belvitz of Alexandria, Virginia, his son Jay Sapasaris and Darlene Roberts of Lowell, his 2 beloved grandchildren, Foster and Annie Belvitz, a brother Charles of Dracut, sister-in-law Nancy Sapasaris of Upper Arlington, Ohio, Elaine Sicosella of Chelmsford, Lee Moylan of Conyers, Georgia, and Susan Gimos of Lowell, along with many cousins, nieces, nephews, and friends. He was the brother of the late Peter, Stella, Steve, and Michael. This is not in the paper yet, but so people will know. In George N. Sapasaris, age 86, beloved husband of the late Dorothea Gimos Sapasaris, friends will be received at the Morse Bayless Funeral Home, 122 Princeton Boulevard, on Friday from 3 p.m. until 7 p.m. His funeral services will be held on Saturday at the Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Church, 62 Lewis Street, at 12:30. In lieu of flowers, donations will be made to either the University of Massachusetts Lowell College of Education, George Sapasaris 77 Endowed Scholarship Fund, or to the Greater Lowell Community Foundation, George Sapasaris Lowell High School Fund. Before I end, I'd like to give you an idea for some who may not know George that well, some of the younger folks in the audience, what George did for the Lowell school system, George Sapasaris, Superintendent Sapasaris. George was responsible for the ambitious $300 million long-range 17 buildings program that was 90% state-funded. The building program erected 12 new elementary and middle schools, renovated 5 elementary middle schools, and extensively renovated, with $40 million, Lowell High School. George was also responsible for the following: implementation of the 1987 Voluntary Desegregation and Educational Improvement Plan, creation of controlled choice, central enrollment registration, and the Parent Information Center, implementation of the 1988 Voluntary Compliance Plan, creation of partnerships with the Center for Field Service and Studies, UMass Lowell and Middlesex Community College, creation of preschool programs and all-day kindergarten classes for the city of Lowell, creation of the Lowell Public Schools Leadership Academy for principals, assistant principals, and central office administrators. I was part of that group, and what Superintendent Sapasaris did, he wanted to make sure that his principals could lead very well the fine teachers in the Lowell school system, that would be given the skills to understand how to evaluate and develop curriculum. The one thing that you can say about George Sapasaris is that he made a difference. And he was a friend and advisor to many of us, and especially to me. I felt I could always count on him for good advice. Sometimes it was advice I may not want to hear, but he was always one to give you whatever he thought was right, to do the right thing. And he will be missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Elliott? Counselor Elliott?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Elliott, before we go to you, can we go to Counselor Leary?
Just quickly, I've served on the school committee for 10 years, and I did not serve while Mr. Sapasaris was the superintendent. But I became friends with Mr. Sapasaris because he was a person who would reach out to you and work with you in issues when you had a challenge. And someone I called often when there were problems in terms of dealing with whatever particular issue arose whenever, in the school committee that we ever had. As Councilor Samaras articulated, the advice wasn't always what you wanted to hear, but it was sound, objective information that you could utilize to solve problems. And he did it in a way that was positive, and it was in a way that he was doing it as a friend, or as in my case, as a father figure, in terms of what you should be looking at and what are the good questions to ask when you're dealing with these tough situations. And he was always positive. He's always like, at the end of the day, you are just do what you think is best, do the right thing, and everything will be positive at the end. So my condolences to the family. My thoughts and prayers to the family. I will sorely miss him. He was someone that I look forward to, conversing about the Lowell Public Schools, someone that I learned an awful lot about, and I think the city has lost a true leader in this community, not only for the education, but just generally as someone that, one of our city fathers is George Sapasaris, and we lost a great man. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to also include in the moment of silence in darkened chambers that we include the little 7-year-old boy that died tragically this past Saturday evening in the city of Lowell, and that our prayers are with his family and his relatives and his friends, and the city is here to help them in any way we can.
Thank you. Next, under the mayor's business, we have a communication. We have a letter from Superintendent, from Dr. Kafawi, Superintendent of Schools, regarding his response to making the Lowell High School existing facility surplus should it become vacant. Do we have a motion to accept the communication, place it on file?
Good question. I guess, actually, it's a good bit of information, a lot of it in terms of actually saving money with special ed costs, which I think is exactly what the city needs in terms of the amount of money that we're spending on out-of-district placement costs. When we go through that, if that's something where we go to Colley, and we definitely going to utilize that, do we have any idea what the infrastructure at the 22 and the 1898 building are going to need just to bring it up to proper standard for allowing for special education? I think that the plan is actually very sound. I think at the end of the day, I think it makes a lot of sense, because the more money we pay out, it's something that, Mayor, you've spoken about the Elks Club and other ways of bringing in out-of-district tuition. This is something that, one way or the other, we got to do it, but how much money are we going to have to spend up front to make that happen? Or, it might be an unfair question for tonight. We might want to get that information in the next coming weeks, but I think ultimately that whole picture needs to be tied in, I think.
I think that that's maybe not information that you're going to get in a couple of weeks. I think that all of the superintendent is doing is just saying that should the high school no longer be there, there are several other uses.
Oh, no, I agree.
And all of those uses would require renovations and probably extensively in some cases.
Okay.
So I think the gist of the letter really is that the building would not be declared surplus, and so people who have mentioned, turning the building into luxury condominiums or some other commercial use, that's probably not going to happen, given the requirements of the school department.
The premise of the question, though, is it more cost advantageous to go out to an RFP at the end of the day? Would we actually be willing to pay it? And I know that answer can't be given tonight. I think the ultimate goal, though, is to get in-district folks in, and this is probably another allocated space that makes sense. But I think that we need to look at so what's cost advantageous? What are we able to spend? What does it require, or is it more cost advantageous to go to an RFP? Issues we can't solve here tonight, but those are the things that we really need to have presented. Thank you.
Council Leahy.
Thank you. When he mentions, I don't know, through you to the manager, or he does mention just Kirk Street, but he does mention cafeteria and gymnasium space. So is it confused, or does he want both buildings?
I think the superintendent of schools is never confused.
Okay.
But if you would like clarification on the letter, I'll try to get it for the next meeting.
All right, because he mentions gymnasium and cafeteria spaces, and that's in the other building. So, all right, we are going ahead, though, with the roof, right, on that building? So, okay. All right, thank you.
Any further discussion? Council Rourke.
I think so.
Councilor Samaras.
Is this a response to a motion that was filed by the school committee or by the city council?
Yes. It was a motion by Council Leahy back in September.
Oh, okay, great. So I heard the superintendent say before that he'd like to get out of the Merrimack Street offices and move his central offices. And there have been multiple studies or requests done by the city council to see what can be done with that property, the 22 building. Any reason why he waited until the 19th to respond?
Not that I know
None at all?
of. I didn't write the letter, he wrote the letter. The motion was put on September 12th or the 24th or something, yeah. A couple of times, I guess, so it's in response to a council motion.
Thank you.
Council Samaras.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to take motion 10.1 out of order because we have a speaker tonight.
Well, first we need a motion to accept this communication and place it on file. Motion by Council Samaras, second by Council Rourke. Discussion on the motion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. Council Samaras.
Thank you. Again, I'd like to take motion 10.1 out of order. We have Ms. Sue Levine, the CEO of the Community Health Center, here to speak on this motion, and it's an important motion. The Community Health Center does a lot of fine work for the city of Lowell, but they're facing a potentially serious financial cut, and I'd like to have her explain that.
All right, Council Samaras is requesting that we take item 10.1, a city council motion filed by
Second.
him, out of order. If there's no objection, we'll do that. Seconded by Council Elliott. Council Samaras on the motion. Do you want to hear from the registered speaker first?
I'd like to have the speaker first, yes.
Sue Levine.
Good evening. Thank you, Manager Murphy, Mayor Kennedy, and members of the City Council. It's a pleasure to be with you here tonight, and thank you for your time on this matter. My name is Susan Levine, and I'm the CEO of Lowell Community Health Center. Thank you again for considering this motion to seek continued funding for our health center. Thank you to Councilor Samaras for your motion tonight. As many of you know, the Lowell Community Health Center has been part of our community since 1970 with the mission to provide caring, quality, and culturally competent care to the residents of Greater Lowell, regardless of ability to pay. It's also important to note that we are the only federally qualified or federally designated health center in the Greater Lowell community. The nearest other health center is in Lawrence. As a health center, we have several locations, including our Main Street and Meta Health Center sites on Jackson Street. We have 4 school-based clinics and a PACE program for seniors. 39% of the Lowell Community Health Center patients are best served in a language other than English. 70% are covered through Medicaid. 77% live below 200% of the federal poverty level, which for an individual is $24,000 a year, and for a family of 4, that's only $49,000 a year. Since consolidating many of our services under one roof on Jackson I do that at work too. We have added 15,000 new patients and now serve more than 50,000 people a year. That's almost half the population of Lowell. That number includes about 29,000 unique patients, meaning unique primary care patients. And we reach our patients through community outreach and education. We have a team block program that provides after-school services and a summer program. And we have many collaborations across the city for other health and social services that we provide to our community. To meet the growing demand and also provide vitally needed services, we are renovating another 65,000 square feet of additional space on Jackson Street to add dental and vision services and expand primary care. This project is a $25.6 million capital project, and we are on time and on schedule to open in February of 2018. We are already among the city's largest employers with nearly 400 staff. That will grow to almost 500 by 2019. We plan to hire about 80 individuals between now and June 1st. And nearly half of our staff live in the city of Lowell, with a preponderance of the remaining staff living in Greater Lowell. Our annual economic impact is estimated at $52 million, increasing to an estimated $98 million by 2019. I'm here today to urge the council to send letters of support for the CHIME Act, and this is the Community Health Investment, Modernization, and Excellence Act, to fund the Health Center Fund for 5 years. The current funding expired this past September 30th when we hit what we call the Health Center funding cliff, and you may have read that or heard that in the media. This federal funding for our health center approximates to 10% of our total health center budget, which is $4.2 million. Of that, 70% is at risk and has expired, and we will not retain that funding if it's not reauthorized. That 70% equates to $2.9 million. And again, without this funding, we are at great and significant risk of not being able to provide the critical healthcare services in the city of Lowell. Nationally, it's estimated that failure to reauthorize the health center fund will affect 2,800 health centers, cost 50,000 jobs, and most importantly, reduce services for over 9 million patients. I'm not going to provide you today with statistics for what the impact would be for Lowell because it is our duty. We've been here since 1970. We are going to do everything in our power to continue to be here for our community. So I have abstained from coming here with any calculations in terms of an employee impact or a patient impact. I do not want to create any concern for our community or for our staff. But needless to say, $2.9 million is a significant amount to our budget. So this level of impact doesn't just hurt us, it will end up hurting our entire community, our local economy, and drive up the cost of healthcare as more patients turn to emergency rooms for routine care. We are very fortunate that Congresswoman Tsongas is among those in Congress leading the charge to reauthorize CHIME, that's the name of the legislation, and that there is widespread bipartisan support for community health centers in DC. So there's still time to save this funding. There's a couple more opportunities before the end of the calendar year, and for all of our health centers, January 1 is the big date. If it's not reauthorized by January, some of us, depending on when our federal funding cycle hits, we will immediately see a financial impact in the coming year. And for the health center, our key date is March 1st. So we have provided you as a formal letter of support for the CHIME Act that we are seeking your support. And the more that we can gin up support at the local level, the state level, to our federal delegation to get their attention on this matter at a very busy time in DC, it'd be greatly appreciated. So thank you very much, and I appreciate your support.
Thank you. Before we continue, let me read the motion, which is to request that the City Council send a letter of support to the Lowell Community Health Center regarding their request to Congress to pass the Community Health Investment Modernization and Excellence Act of 2017, which is CHIME, right?
CHIME.
Yep. All right, so the motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Council Samaras.
I just want to say, as the former headmaster of Lowell High School, I know how important the community health program is to Lowell High School and actually the Lowell school system. And Ms. Levine has outlined, I think what is a serious problem. And we just can't afford to have her constituents, which are our constituents, without services. So I'd like to offer that the City Council send a letter of support. But could I also add, Mr. Manager, that also your administration send a letter of support so that they would get a letter of support from the Lowell City Council and also from the Lowell administration, because I think it's that important. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilor Elliott.
I just want to briefly add the significance and the importance of this community health center. They've come so far and raised private money and relocated to a beautiful building with employing so many people, more importantly, servicing so many people in this community. And, this is short money in the big scheme of things. It's a $4 trillion budget, and there are plenty of other areas, in my opinion, that they can cut rather than this program. So whatever we can do, you and other mayors, Mr. Mayor, I'm sure there's a concerted effort across the country to support this and get letters out. I think it's very important that we do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If there's no objection, the mayor's office will also ask that the members of the delegation send a letter as well. So that would be more letters, which can only help.
Good.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, all in favor of the motion, all opposed, so voted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, under the city clerk, we have the minutes of the zoning subcommittee of October 17th, the city council meeting of October 17th for acceptance. Do we have a motion to accept and place on file? Do we want to hear from the zoning subcommittee? Council Milonazo? No. All right. Motion to accept and place on file by Council Milonazo, second by Council Rourke. Discussion on the motion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. Being before 7 o'clock, we'll skip ahead to the communications from the city manager. The first communication from the city manager is regarding the dedication of Mary Kay McNeil. Do we have any discussion on that? If not, we'll move on to the lowered overpass update.
Just quickly,
Councilor Leary.
thank you, Mayor. Just, Mr. Manager, if you could kind of just outline exactly the timeframes that we'll be looking at this to begin and when the final completion will be done.
Excellent. I think I'll have the traffic engineer give you the debt. He's been working diligently on this. If you could, the question is, could you just give a brief overview of the timeframe for these developments along Thorndike and the Lot Overpass?
Yes, sir. Through you, Mr. Manager. The project is so large, we actually broke it up into 3 segments. Segment 2 is the Thorndike Street widening from YMCA up to the Gallagher Station. That project is, we finished the design. It's going out to bid, and bids open first week of November, and it will be done by June 30th of next year. That's a $1.8 million project, all funded through MassWorks. So we built the the trail on the South Common so that we can remove the sidewalk. So that project will be completed, and that includes 3 new intersections. The Lord Overpass itself, design, we're at 25% design. We're late summer of next year, it'll be going out to bid, and then it'll be about 2.5 years of construction. And that's, we're using the Mass DOT $15 million grant to design and build that construction. Any shortfalls will be made up with Chapter 90 money and some capital money we've been saving up for that occasion.
So the
Council
next
Leary.
public meeting on this for option 4, for the, for concept 4 will be taking place on November 13th. Is that in the Pollard Memorial Library?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I guess for the public to know that this is definitely, there's one more opportunity at that point to really have your position noted. I think we probably should at least bring that forward here as well at that point before we have this completely designed. I think I think this project needs to succeed. I don't think it, I know it needs to succeed in order to have any development in downtown. A lot of the things we're gonna try to achieve are having the access coming in. So I think if anything we can do is make sure public input is there. I got a lot of questions, I'm sure other people do as well. Is this really gonna work? How is this designed? How is it gonna be more walkability? I know we went through the presentations, but we really need to do this again and make sure people have a clear understanding and make any adjustments that we need to in order to make sure it's working. So for the public, I guess at the next, the public meeting will be held at the library on Monday, November 13th at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? If not, we'll move on to the Lowell High School ancillary cost. Councilman Milanazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the report. Let me begin by taking the high road and almost a mea culpa and say that Councilor Elliott was correct last week when he said that the delta was 6 million. I think I was using a number that was a lot higher than that. And that happened as a result of a former mayor asking me for the last version of the plan, which was dated June 1st. So when I went back to my file, I grabbed the last set of numbers that was in the file. So again, the delta is $6 million, so I'll put that out there. The information that we received tonight, I would actually like it to go on the high school web page if we could. But again, we're looking at a total of $11 million when you put the park improvements. Again, this report has to do with the Colley site. The actual motion that I have on later in the evening is really to compare both sites as to what the additional ancillary costs are. You've got $1.2 million in traffic signalization, $500,000 in road improvements, sidewalk improvements, a little over $1 million. $5 million for sewer improvements, and some of that work does, in my opinion, and I think my colleagues would agree, needs to be done. I don't know if, again, if it's $5 million, if the high school ends up not going to Colley, and then $1.3 million in water improvements. I'm hearing that the new tire store along Rogers Street is actually having problems with water pressure, so they're looking for a new line as well to be put along Rogers Street. And then we're talking about the additional busing costs and then the bell schedules. And again, it's a very detailed report. I certainly appreciate getting this information. Again, looking at the total borrowing expense for the ancillary improvements that would be associated with Colley ends up, with interest, ends up being a little over $18 million. But again, I don't know if we want to take up my motion now, but it's simply that we will compare both the Colley site and the high school site, not necessarily even, I guess I would say option 3, but at the end of the day, I think we really need to see, the difference in cost, Colley versus the downtown, because again, I don't think that there are park improvements. We don't have to do Article 97 if it's downtown. We don't have to do traffic signalization, again, if it's downtown. Sidewalk improvements. Again, some of the sewer work for that area of Belvedere would probably be part of the capital plan going forward. I don't know if it'll be $5 million. But again, I certainly appreciate the information, and I think at the end of the day, it's good information for the general public to have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, I just have one question. Councilor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilman Milanazzo. I think we should have options, all downtown options, to be given to us. Since there's no clear-cut downtown option, even though there is a clear-cut Collie option. And also one question, so these are based on the maximum amounts that could be included?
These are based upon the estimates that have been given by our different agents in the city, like the traffic engineer, the water department, wastewater.
Thank you.
Council Leary.
Just a quick question. I guess going over through the sidewalk improvements, one of the things that, and I know your motion's come up and I like it, we need to look at Lawrence High School and other places that have done similar sized buildings like Brockton. And I keep saying Fall River and people ignore me. It's in a similar neighborhood with 3 high schools. And I think we need to go out there and take a look at it, because for the life of me, and I don't want to get into an ongoing, never-ending battle, but some of the stuff I hear about the sidewalks make no sense to me, especially after walking these 3 other areas. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong, and I think we need to take a look at what other folks have done and how they did it in order to not only be safe, but be effective. When I hear stuff like Clark Road needs sidewalks and 53 trees are going to be taken, and I think, gee, there's probably more kids at the Riley that live north of Clark Road in that area that don't have those sidewalks today. Doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense when most of the students that are going to be coming to Lowell High School are going to be coming from the other side of the city. Again, I'm an insurance executive, I'm not a traffic engineer, but common sense is something that we need to start taking a look at. And one of the things you do when you're in business is you look at what other folks have already done. And when I look at Lawrence, there's one way in and there's one way out. They actually have more students than Lowell High School at this point in time. So I think it'd be a good idea, and I think we've done it ourselves and on our own, non-trained eyes, non-trained information, but this is stuff that we actually need to do. And if it comes out that we need to do these improvements to make something work, to make people safe, then that's what we do, because that's what has to be done. But I'm a little incredulous about some of this information, especially when I know other locations, Fall River, Brockton, and right down the road, 10 miles down the road, Lawrence are out there, and we haven't looked at it yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank the manager for a very detailed report here. But I'd like to ask, Mr. Mayor, through you, for Mark Young to come to the podium and sort of elaborate a little bit on this $5 million sewer improvements. And as we know, there are existing issues at Douglas and Woodward with drainage. That's been a long time coming that needs to be addressed, either way, a high school ends up there or not. And Councilor Milanasso just stated that is a new business there. It looks very nice, I might add, but they have water pressure issues as well. So there are existing issues there currently as we speak that need to be rectified. So I'd like some clarification from Mark Young as to how much of this is basically, is the $5 million, Mr. Young, the sewer improvements, and the other 1.3 for water improvements basically going to have to be done either way?
Yes.
That's a clear-cut answer. Thank you. Now, on the $5 million, I mean, that's a lot of money, but these residents, they've been in front of this council a number of occasions, Mr. Young, as you know. So what is the status? Where are we at? I know you did last week, but if you could, again, elaborate that, these costs, we're going to have to get this done. And then after that, I'd like to hear from Connor Baldwin. This is a water and sewer enterprise. This is a different fund entirely. So what the impact on that would be as well. So, Mr. Young, if you could give us an update, please.
Well, the project that we're thinking and that has in mind, and just bear in mind that we're not at a design phase yet.
Yes.
This is a conceptual plan for that area. It would be a storage project in the vicinity of the Colley parking lot. So that area, like I explained last week, it's a 700-acre sewer shed, and Wynwood Road is the low point in that sewer shed. So this would be a facility to store stormwater, rainwater, so that it doesn't surcharge that line. And then later, when the storm is over, it'll be pumped back into the sewer line and then brought to Duck Island for treatment.
Yep. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. And how soon do you think that design will be complete again?
We don't have the funding for the design right now.
Okay. Mr. Manager, what's the plan for this design? How soon can we get going on this? As we stated, this needs to get done either way.
Either one of these costs, the design and construction phase of the projects, would need to be funded with a loan order, and the debt service for the loan order would be supported for the sewer work by the wastewater enterprise and
Right.
for the water work by the Water Enterprise Fund.
Okay, can we get going on this, gentlemen? The impact on the enterprise fund and the cost on these issues? Because, you know, these residents need relief either way. And so we look forward to future updates there. So basically, with interest, as Councilor Milanazzo said, 18 million is cut in half. Because basically, this we have to do anyhow. So I'm just trying to simply segregate costs that need to be done initially, either way, and costs that would be incurred by the high school. I think that's important. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council. Council Milonazo?
Thank you. Just to follow up on some of Council Belanger's points, that this has to be done regardless of the high school going there. But again, I'm not an engineer, but if you take a 5-story, 600,000 square foot building and put it where we're contemplating putting it, and you're going to have a cellar hole that's about 125,000 square feet, all of that water has to go somewhere. So in my opinion, that if the high school's not there, the amount of water separation that you're going to have to do along with the sewer, and again, you're not going to have 4,000 people flushing toilets in that neighborhood if the high school's not there. So again, I understand the point. I'm going to support the loan order when it comes through to do that work in that neighborhood. But at the end of the day, once we know what the parameters of the design is, then we'll know what the cost is. I'm not going to sit here and suggest to anybody that it's actually going to be $5 million until we know what the whole plan is. So I think having the building there will cost X. Not having the building there will cost Y. That's, again, a layman's opinion.
Well, the storage isn't really dictated by, the size of the facility wouldn't be dictated by the high school, it would be dictated by the present present conditions of, especially during rainstorm. And that's the issue. It's not during dry weather. It's not the present capacity. It's when wet weather occurs.
You all set? Council Leary, then Council Leahy. Council Leahy, then Council Leary.
Thank you. Where are you talking about, through you to Mark Young, where are you talking about putting the storage?
Potentially, there could be a few different areas, but the area that we're looking right now would be the Colley parking lot.
So under the parking lot, there's a water, like a pool?
No, that's where you would put storage facilities. Storage facilities are typically buried underground.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
So what if you have to get to it? You gotta go through the parking lot, right? So we're not putting it where the potential softball field may go. You're
Right.
saying over to the side. Okay. So when you do this, like, we just did some streets up in Belvedere, we did some Glenwood Street. Now there's markings on all the streets around there. So when you do the water, do you have to do the gas lines, and are we doing everything? I mean,
The gas lines, it's not up to the city.
no, I know, but we just paved new streets up in Wentworth and Luce Street and Glenwood, and now the whole neighborhood is marked up like they're gonna dig everything up for gas lines. So I'm confused, like, when we do the water lines, is there gonna be a delay? Because
Well, the
if we have
water,
everything dug up, we might as well do the gas lines.
the
too.
water line would be on Rogers Street. That's the main line to get water to the business that was alluded to
Yeah.
earlier. There would have to be a line that would go from there to the high school to supply water from there. So, yeah, we would have to dig up the streets in order to put those lines
So
in.
how far up Douglas Road do we go? Like Wynwood down to Rogers?
For the stormwater?
Well, for everything, I guess.
You would have, it would be on Douglas Road, a significant portion of Douglas Road would have to be redone, because you're gonna direct that water into those storage facilities.
Okay. All right, it just seems like when we did all these new streets, now all of a sudden I see all these markings for gas lines, and I don't know what that's for. I get several calls today. No, I get several calls today asking why is Wentworth Street and Ridge Road and Luce Street and Hovey Street and all these streets have markings from NESCOM or whatever, NUCO. So they mark like a whole square mile of streets, and everybody's concerned that they're gonna dig the neighborhood up. So I didn't know if this is gonna happen when we start doing work on Douglas Road.
I'm not
or we
familiar with
changing
the
gas
areas
lines.
that they're going to do work,
Yeah.
and I'm not really familiar with
All right,
the areas of work.
okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Council Leary?
Well, not to follow up with Council Milonazo's comments, but ultimately, it's because we're building the high school, we even raised these issues. I mean, these issues basically came from a resident there, Lynn Daly had raised them. I put a motion on it. We also have the motion regarding the Douglas Road. So this is an issue that has not, basically been neglected for a while. And ultimately, when you're digging up all Douglas Road and repairing it, that's something that's going to improve the neighborhood over the long haul and really has to be done regardless if Cawley actually comes to fruition or not. Am I correct, Mr. Manager?
Yes, especially for the people on Wynwood Road.
Thank you.
Could I just ask one other question? Through you, the manager, I know this is before your time, but how long has this, maybe Mr. Young, how long has this issue been on the table for? 20 years, 30 years?
We had a lot of complaints, I would say maybe in that time frame.
At
There
least
was-
20 years?
Right,
maybe?
and there was some work done on the wetlands to alleviate the wetlands from flooding over and flooding the sewer system, and again, aggravating the backups in the sewer system. But once that culvert was replaced on Clark Road, we don't have the issue with the wetlands, so we don't have the wetlands backing up into the sewer system. But we
So
still
for
have the
20
problem
years,
when it
we just
rains.
we never prioritized this for the last 20 years?
Not
maybe?
compared to the other problems that we had in the city that were worse.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Council Rourke?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could suspend the rules. Why don't we just take 10-3 now? It's very similar to the motion response we have anyway.
Sorry, I didn't hear what he said.
Could we take 10-3 out of order now? Because, talk about the same subject, so we can get it out of the way.
Sure.
Do you
If we-
object to that?
Yep,
Okay.
no, that's fine.
All right, Council Rourke is asking that we take 10-3 out of order. There's a registered speaker for 10-3. That's a motion by Councilman. If there's no objection, we'll take 10-3 out of order simultaneous, which is a motion by Councilman Milonazo. Request that the city manager prepare a detailed list of all estimated costs associated with both the high school locations and the direct impact to the taxpayer, including soft costs, construction costs, and ancillary or related costs, such as Article 97, water and sewer upgrades, transportation and pedestrian improvements, potential eminent domain costs, and busing costs, etc. The motion is seconded by Council Rourke. Council Milonazo, do you want to hear from the registered speaker
Sure,
first?
yes, thank you.
Armin Hebert.
Armin Hebert, 499 Wilder Street. I see we got another motion up here for more information. A few weeks ago, I was a little angry about how many motions are being made on this, and then I went on social media, and we need this information. People are going nuts. But a lot of the things that are on this, I think we should make amendments to, too. Now, from what I understand, we can't build this without the MSBA's money. Okay, we can't do either project. So that's one of the things that's a concern. If we can't do it, we got to make sure we can secure that money. The other thing is, Councilor Milonazo put both sites on there. Now, we already have a preference site sent to the MSBA. My question there is, if we change the site, how long will this delay the project? Because, if delaying this project further is going to cost more money in construction costs. All right, so that's one of the other things we got to look into. I think that should be, hopefully one of the councils will make an amendment to ask for that information too. How do we go about, if we don't go to Cawley, if we go back downtown, how does that work now that we had already presented our preference to the MSBA and how long it's going to take to change? The other thing is, we need a cost of all this, all these feasibility studies, and what is this costing the city, and how much money, if they go to Cawley, we're not in the design stage now, so we don't even know how much will be reimbursed by the state for infrastructure. There will be some reimbursement because to build a school, you got to have infrastructure. So some of it is reimbursable. The other thing is sidewalks. I went to school at the Riley School at 5 years old. We never had sidewalks. We didn't even have a crosswalk to get across Andover. We had a crossing guard that used to take her life into her own hands every time she stepped out there, and it was 4 lanes of traffic back then. So we're asking for a lot of sidewalks for high school kids. Hey, it's good for the community. Sidewalks are good. People can walk them at night and all that. So I don't think that should be a big issue. If the sidewalks need to be put in, they should be put in. We're putting them in all over the city. Highlands have just got a lot of sidewalks put in there. Sidewalks are good for people to walk on, and it's not just for the school. people's making it out like if the school goes to Cawley, Belvedere's gonna put out a thing and they're gonna move to Tewksbury. Hey, whatever, you know what I mean? We gotta keep this school thing going. This city needs a new school. All right, and that's all there is to it. If that's the preference choice, we gotta find out how much time if we change that preference choice, because construction delays mean big money. Thank you.
Karen Cirillo.
Hi, good evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Karen Cirillo, and I'm running for City Council. I live at 77 6th Street here in Lowell. I'd like to thank you, Councilor Milanazzo, for this motion. The numbers from the earlier motion response regarding ancillary costs at the Cawley site are a good start for getting a fuller picture of what this project will cost and all that it will entail. I also want to thank Laura Gilmore, who spoke so elegantly about transparency, about the very real regulatory hurdles that still exist for any plan to relocate the school. But looking at this summary, I see the $18 million for new infrastructure, which includes the debt service, while maintaining and also repairing our old infrastructure at the downtown location. And this report does not include busing and the actual Cawley building costs. These are the costs we know for sure. But I actually have a background in construction and having worked at an engineering firm. And by the way, there is no such thing as creative engineering. There will be additional costs required, not at the discretion of the City Council, but mandated by state law, such as the traffic improvements to Route 38. As we continue to find answers for our constituents on this very important issue, I ask for every effort to get the fullest and most honest information out to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Dillon, Jr.
Hi, Mike Dillon Jr., 799 Chelmsford Street. I also believe it's a good motion. We need that info. There are people out there very, very misinformed, and we're really close to an election. There are people that are convinced that the difference between the downtown and Cawley location is hundreds and thousands of dollars to them in taxes. And that is, I'm okay at math. I'm actually better than okay, but I'm not a mathematician. And I haven't seen anything that indicates anywhere that there's going to be that much of an increase between these two options. Somewhere along the lines, people believe that, I don't know, maybe they haven't been caught up since option 1 was available. I don't know what it is. But people truly believe that if the school is built at Cawley, they are not going to be able to survive. That's just not true. And the whole idea that this motion is being brought up right now pretty much negates anything anybody said in the past about being so confident in the number in the first place and how much this is going to cost us. Because the truth is that we have no idea what the final number is going to be in either situation. So anybody that's saying this is more fiscally responsible, this is, we don't know, so you cannot say that. You can't use that as a reason for choosing one or the other. And to have so many people that's confused and so far off on the result of either situation, the results of this motion, I don't know when they're gonna come to fruition, but I mean, that should be posted everywhere. I mean, that's information that we need to have now. We just don't know at the end of the day. But what I do know is that moving the school to Cawley provides us with an opportunity for growth. It really does. And whether you like it or not, it's not going to be easy. I know that. But the only way I know how to get things done is to work hard at it. Like it's going to be hard work either way, wherever we go. We do have an opportunity to do something really special. And think to yourself, where do you want this city to be? You know, you can't think about where your taxes are going to be in the next 2 or 3 years. The amount between the two is not enough to push somebody over the edge. I understand times are tough. I live paycheck to paycheck. Where do we want to be in 2030? Where do we want the city to be in 2050? I have high hopes, and I'm optimistic about where I want the city to go. And there are a lot of people at that high school that feel the same way. And they need a new building. And a lot of young people around here want to do that work. Some of them are running for office right now. They want to do that work. They want to make it happen, and they know how. They're brilliant, smarter than I am. I don't want to lose, I've mentioned this before here, where are we in 2030 or 2040 after we go ahead with renovation? We do have ourselves a new school down there. We've lost whatever number, because we know numbers really don't mean much at this point, whatever number of families from the community, and families that do leave, they have kids who are going to be successful, most likely. The families that have the ability to leave, they're going to have kids that contribute to our high school. How many of them are we going to lose? What opportunities do we have for growth, keeping the school downtown, in order to put this city to where we want it to be in 2030 and 2050? They're very slim. I think this is a good thing, but I wish we had the information before. And we really need to clear up these issues. People will believe anything they see online, but it's to the point now where I'm interested to see the results. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is that it? Councilman Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the speakers that came forward to talk about the motion. Again, from the standpoint of transparency and information, I think it's important to, get this motion approved and ask the administration to provide this for both the Colley site and for the downtown site. The numbers that we do have to date, especially the numbers on the construction, on all the options, I mean, they were provided to us by the experts that we've hired. So we need, in my opinion, we need to rely on those numbers as they are today from the standpoint of the construction and what will be the cost to the taxpayer. And then the other numbers that we've received over the last, say, 2 to 3 weeks have come from local experts. And at this point, I'm relying on those numbers so that we can at least provide the taxpayer, the people that obviously have an interest in this discussion, the information that they need in order to make really a final decision. I mean, I don't want to get into the upcoming election, but at the end of the day, I think it's important to have this information for everybody, as Mr. Dillon indicated, that we can all rely on to move forward. So again, it's transparency. It's just getting the information that I think we all really want to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion on the motion or on the communication from the city manager? Mr. Manager, I just have one question if I could ask. There is a letter that Lynn Daly received. You and I were both CC'd on that letter. And in that letter, which comes from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, it indicates that funding will not be possible until the MEFA study is complete. And also CC'd on that letter is the MSBA. So I guess, I'm not sure that you would have the answer tonight, but I would think it would be worthwhile to see what the MSBA's position would be on that. And what I mean by that is, in December, the city will probably be going forward with the MSBA with a preferred option. And so would it be that the MSBA will not entertain going forward until the MEFA study is completed?
We're actually meeting with Deidre Buckley next week, so we'll be able to have the answers to all of these questions and give a report as to how we're going to proceed.
Council Leary.
Since you brought the MEPA letter up, see, my understanding was, the part of the process was, the funding wouldn't be approved by the MSBA. That the process, and it's painful to understand, I mean, real painful, that this was a site location that we were looking at, Wednesday, we're looking at, that it had really, all this would have to be done anyway, and that the MSBA would have approved a location if there wasn't a controversy. And then when we come to the funding later on down the road, when all this would have to be done anyway, I think Skanska and Perkins Eastman knew this was good, this part of the process, that they would vote on it in another procedure. Am I missing something? Because when you read the letter, it's like, you're not getting it because you did something wrong, is what the letter seems to say.
And that's why we
basically.
set up the meeting next
Yeah.
week, just to clear everything and make sure that we have the instructions from EEA is exactly what's going on.
But am I missing something with what I just said, or am I incorrect?
No,
or-
my understanding is that we were allowed to go forward with design,
Correct.
but you won't get final funding until the MEPA review is complete.
Which is a normal part of the process
Right.
that
And-
Skanska.
but right, exactly.
So let me
But the-
stop. Let's just make sure I understand, because I'm a little confused. What we were doing for yesterday is to get schematic design, correct?
Correct,
Okay, for a location that we made a decision on.
correct.
Okay, so schematic design answers a lot of the questions in terms of cost, because you actually now are designing it, correct? So what they were doing was actually just approving the schematic design and going forward. A lot of the other procedures you were talking about in this letter would have to be dealt with once they give the final approval for funding. Or am I just missing something?
Christine actually spoke to, Deirdre, would you just explain what we're going to be talking about next week with Deirdre Buckley?
Sure thing. So the phase which we remain in is the site phase. If approved, we would have then begun the design phase, and it's at really that design phase, both with respect to the MEPA regulations as well as the CMRs as they apply to 70B, that we would have then begun steps towards MEPA review. And again, we've been in discussions with Deirdre and this process, and we indicated at least a couple of weeks ago now that as soon as possible, we would like to sit down with them as soon as the advisory letter was out, so that we could begin having these pre-meetings and pre-filing meetings and begin the process as soon as possible. I mean, one cautionary point is that you have to at least be so far along in the process so that you can have an effective ENF filing.
Okay, so.
Have enough information to do it.
Which makes sense. So ultimately,
Right.
though, going through the site location, the way I read the letter initially, I'm like, we didn't do something timely, but that's not the case then, is it?
No, not at all. And
So
that's
we're
not-
actually going according to plan, actually. We are a little bit derailed because we're looking at still at the site location. Is that correct?
Yes, so as the manager said, we'll be meeting with her, and we will prepare a report after we have the meeting with her. But as far as the timing of it, there is nothing that we should have done that we haven't done.
That's what I want to make sure we understand. So ultimately, if they chose, say for example, we chose whatever, option 2 or whatever, and they approved it tomorrow, which they're not going to do, obviously, we are on we're following the path in the proper order that was laid out for us by the MSBA.
Correct. Under the new regulations, under 70B, 960 CMR,
Yep.
the phase that we are still in right now, the MEPA review is not part of part of that requirement.
Okay. And the funding would have to have the MEPA review, which would come in 2019?
That would actually be, I think it's module 5 or 6, actually.
So roughly 2019 would be looking at that.
Funding.
Okay. So we're doing everything really according to plan.
At this point, we are.
I mean, we're
remain
delayed
on
because of
track.
other issues, but up until tomorrow, we were doing everything in the order that it's required.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Councilman Milazzo.
Again, is it safe to say, though, that in the event that we end up changing site selection and going downtown, that a lot of these items that are mentioned in this letter go away? We're not generating 4,000 cars, we're not putting 855 parking spaces. So again, you know, the whole process does take a different direction if we end up going back downtown, staying downtown.
Sure. One of the things that, and we'll be discussing this further with them, but they will be looking at both sites and advising the MSBA as to the impact of both sites, and we will be actively participating in that process. And so, yes, if the city, if ultimately the Cawley site was not the selected site, then whatever mitigation efforts would be needed, presumably, obviously there would likely be some, they would no longer apply.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So if I could, Council Leary, the reason that I brought the communication up to everybody's attention is because the MIFA study, which would take 12 months, it's my understanding, would need to be done if Cawley is the site.
By
It does
2019.
not need to be done if downtown is the site.
No, but the
And
point-
originally, in the original schedule, we were supposed to be voting on the loan order maybe in November or December. That was my understanding
But I
back in
thought that-
February. But since that time, if I can finish.
Yeah.
Since that time, I think that the signing of the loan order, or the vote on the loan order, rather, would take place in April and May. However, if the MIFA study is going to take 12 months, and if it hasn't even been started yet, then it's going to be quite some time before the vote on the loan order if we remain a colony.
So the
So
couple-
all I'm asking for is for the city manager to try to get more information from the agency so that everybody knows exactly
Yeah.
where we stand. And he has said that he would have that next week.
No, but since you brought it up, I don't think it was of 12 months. I thought it was 67 days. Maybe I'm missing how this all works, but I don't think it was 12 months, Mayor, and all due respect. I think it was 67 days. But ultimately, I thought the funding with MSBA approval, which is what the MIPA would have to be done, would be in 2019, basically. Or am I missing something there, I guess?
With all due respect, I think that the communication that we received from the traffic engineer indicated that the study was going to take 12 months.
So I guess
don't know
through
where
you, the city
67
manager,
days
I
comes
guess it
from.
was 67 days. Am I missing something here, or am I totally?
Go ahead.
You've got to set, the 67 days comes from the original filing.
Okay.
Which then EEA takes 30 days to tell us
Yep.
what we have to do as
Correct.
far as mitigation. Then that period is in our hands
Okay.
to do the work. And that could take months to do.
Correct.
It could take, 6 months, it could take 12, but it's up to us.
It's up to us
To
then.
expedite that
Okay.
as much as we can.
No, it's a good-
And then once we finish that
Yeah.
analysis, then we submit it to EEA for their review, and they have
37
37
days.
days to tell us if
Okay.
we've completed the mitigation according to their
No, thank you. That actually,
expectations.
that's very helpful. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, and finally, Mr. Manager, if I could, what would be good information to have as well is whether or not, when the study is completed, the MIFA study that is, whether or not all of the mitigation has to be completed before funding is available. That would be an important question as well. Any further discussion? Council Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, are we still working under the auspice that every 30-day delay is $1.2 million added to the bottom line? Or are you reaching out to, because we were told, multiple times that we're $1 million of the cost.
We've put Perkins and Eastman and Scanser on hold, so we haven't really dealt with them relative to those figures at all.
Right. But I do remember you were answering a question.
That was an analysis, that was given at some point in time.
And the reason why we rushed the July docket to the MSBA was to avoid that $1 million added cost per month, correct?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Council Milonazo.
Again, to pick up on Council Rourke's point, if it's out at Cawley and it's a 2-year MIPA study, and we start, tallying $1.2 million a month for 24 months, because again, the expert that we had here last week, who does this for a living, indicated to us that the information that we were considering, as Councilor Leary said, 30 to 60 days, was incorrect. So again, it could take a lot longer at Cawley based upon all of the wetlands issues and the other traffic and water and sewer issues.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Council
Where
Rourke?
did 2 years come from? That's incredible. It's just,
Where
we
does what
were
come from?
talking about, misinformation coming out and all this other stuff. The mayor just said a year, and then even the manager said, it could be done much faster than that. So where does the extra 12 months come added on to that?
Well, Council Rourke, I think you make a good point, but I also think that the 1.2 million, I don't think that holds much water either per month. That's just an estimate that somebody gave off the top of their head at some meeting several months ago. And I don't think that we should be holding anybody to that either. So the problem with this project right along has been that there's been a huge amount of misinformation, and the information constantly changes. And so it's difficult for me, for you, for everybody, I think, on here to get a real grasp of what the numbers are, because they're always in flux and they're always changing.
Right, but isn't that the reason why we go forward with a preferred site, so those numbers can be crunched and that we can give a one number for the council at the time who was here, decides on whether we can fund the project or not? I mean, every project that the MSBA has gone through, this is the project, this is the process that they use, right? You have, costs or estimates for certain sites, and they can't get a definite number until, the preferred location is, I think can be done with, and, I just, again, we heard speakers talk about, getting the right information out there and so forth, but, it's just, let's try to keep on point here.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? All opposed? So voted. Next, we have the Frothingham Street update. Any discussion on the Frothingham Street update, Councilor?
Sure, we have speakers. Can we hear from the speaker
Here's a
first?
registered speaker, Robert Mason.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Kennedy, City Councilors, and City Manager Murphy. First, we would like to thank and acknowledge the actions taken to address the parking of 2 commercial dump trucks on Frothingham Street. The issues seem to have been resolved subsequent to last City Council's meetings. Again, we'd like to thank you very much. We've also reviewed the follow-up memorandum dated October 19th from Mr. Slagle and would like further clarification on some points. Number 1, there was no mention of the attic bedrooms. Has it been determined that proper egress exits for the 3rd floor tenants? Number 2, are the windows being installed in the basement truly windows or a makeshift egress to allow for continued occupancy? I am providing photographs that reflect the work that was being performed last Monday prior to the stop work order, which was referred to as expanding the scope of the permit. Although it has been stated that new windows were being installed with wells, based upon the height of the foundation exposed from the ground, which is approximately 4 feet from the apron, then what kind of windows require, in addition to that, a 4 feet deep hole outside of the house going into the apron? Also, the memorandum states that the bedrooms in the basement will be removed. What is the timeline for corrective action to bring the property into compliance? And since most of the work was performed without permits, is there a probationary period for the property and follow-up inspection since there is a history of non-compliance? Again, Mr. Slagle stated last week that each unit would not be allowed to have more than 3 unrelated parties. And what does monitoring the use of the property mean in reference to this statement? We can tell you that the occupancy level to that home has not changed. The second exhibit is a picture of one of the 2 large oil spills left by the company-owned vehicles. The larger one be right in front of Mr. Gallagher's property, there's one in front of mine as well. Is there a process to request the restoration of the pavement by the city should it be necessary? And also, in closing, is there a new policy or procedure being implemented for improved communication between the assessor's office and the zoning department to ensure that properties are accurately assessed and in compliance with the zoning laws with our city? And again, thank you for your time. And we have pictures for those of you who are interested. That would be, Johnny, you can explain those. That would be the work.
Mr. Mason?
Yes, sir.
Could I suggest that you give those questions to the city manager and that he will have a response to each and every one of those questions by next week?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Council Leahy.
Sure, thank you. So there were a few questions raised last week. Do we need to review the policy as a council, or does it just get done when the assessor's office goes out and looks at a 2-family and says, oh, I think it's a 3-family, and then they rely on the building department to get out there expeditiously to look at it? How, are we gonna change that? Do we need to come in with that, or does that get done? And then,
I'm meeting with the assessor tomorrow morning
Okay.
to discuss that issue.
All right. And then as far as, it does say in the report that there's a work stop work order and until, what, the two parties come in with a new plan or something? Okay, and then then he can start work again, but they've got to agree on what's being done. Okay, and then the other thing was the oil spills in the street, so that may be a new issue, but I'm not sure if we have anything on that, okay. So that's something we can look into. I mean, we're doing so much work on the streets and the city and sidewalk, and then you get these big oil spills, and you know what oil does to the asphalt, it's gonna eat it up, so.
My car must have been parked over that when I visited the site the other
Yeah,
day.
so, okay. So we'll follow up on all these questions, and thank you for all the work you've done so far.
Yeah, again, thank you, Mr. City Manager. Can I give you this?
Sure. Any further discussion on this item?
Just very briefly, Mr. Mayor. So just to follow up, so you're meeting with the assessor's office because this is a precedent that we should set, not only for this property, but for others. So no work can continue. And so immediately, knowing that it's a two-family, how do we ensure that it's reverted back and then, over time, that people don't just start showing up, there's more cars, and, I mean, that's the issue here, because it's built out, and these neighbors they shouldn't have to worry about this taking place. Is it something, they did work that was not permitted, so, and it will have to be at their expense. I mean, as was mentioned, I think Mr. Leahy or the property owners, there's a 5-foot trench that they're not just, they're putting something in there.
Well, first of all, the meeting we're having tomorrow, there's got to be more communication between the assessor's office and the building department. If their job should be recognizing that there are illegal units, not just assessing it the way it is.
But I can tell you, my street coincides with people that building out, and then all of a sudden there are in-law apartments, and they're being advertised to that, so.
So you have to, that's the first thing we're working on. The second thing is on assuring that sufficient amount of people are living there, correct? Not too many unrelated people are living there.
Sure, and we are taking steps to follow up with the property. They do have existing permits for the work that they are doing. Again, we had a stop work order on the property last week. We did an evaluation to make a determination to make sure that they were operating within the scope of their permits. We met with the property owners and their contractor, the building commissioner did, and they will be allowed to install the windows. The building commissioner made the determination that those windows are needed for safety for the finished basement that will remain finished but will no longer be used as bedroom space. It was not a full separate unit. It did not have kitchen facilities, but it did have a microwave down there. So the building commissioner required the property owner to change the egress doorway so that you can no longer put a door there, change it in shape and size so that you wouldn't be able to separate it from the first floor unit. So the inspectors assigned to it will be following up to make sure that the work is done appropriately. After that, we'll be monitoring the property. We've let the property owner know that we will be doing periodic inspections at our discretion to make sure that they're not recontinuing the former use of those spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Council Leahy.
Do a follow-up question. How big, I should know this, but how big of a window are you allowed to put in your basement?
The size of window you're allowed to put in is determined by the building code, so unfortunately, I'm not an expert on the building code.
I mean, it looks like a 4-foot window.
Well, these windows are specifically designed to allow emergency egress. If, for instance, there's a fire in the stairwell, so somebody can't get out of the basement, the windows are designed to allow emergency egress. It's a finished basement, so that they're designed if it's used as a family room and someone's down there, that they can use it as an emergency.
No, I'll just have to check on that. I've been in a lot of houses, I've never seen windows that big. And then second of all, what was the comment about the door going out of the basement way?
So the my understanding, I have not been in the basement. My understanding from the inspectors was that the door was there, was a door that you could lock and latch. And
To the outside or to the apartment?
no, into the
Okay, yeah.
stairwell. And so they're going to change that entryway so that you can't fit a door in it anymore. So it's going to be required to remain open between that basement space and the first floor.
Okay. All right. And then, so they're almost like on a probation.
Yeah, we don't technically call it that, but
Yeah.
that's effectively what it is. We will have our inspectors going out there.
Whenever you can show up, you can just show up.
And we'll show up and get into the common areas and try to make an assessment as to whether or not they've changed the use from what's allowed.
Okay, thank you.
Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Mayor, through to the manager. Mr. Manager, we all appreciate you tackling this problem right away and giving us a report the next week. And I have been in contact with Commissioner Shanahan on this, and some progress has been made. There was heavy trucks, heavy equipment being parked there. They have been ticketed, and they have not returned since that point. A message was sent, you cannot park heavy equipment in a residential area. And a work order was stopped on the property. So we are making some headway. But this is a problem. The problem is this has the appearance to me that this landlord's a new owner. He's pulling permits. He just wants to put bedrooms anywhere and everywhere he can to get the maximum amount of money out of this property. And he's been very arrogant, from what I understand, to the neighbors, saying, basically, I'm going to do what I want to do. And we're going to see about that. That's whole nother story. But this is a problem throughout the city. I'm canvassing the Highland section right now, and it's came up twice in the last, I don't know how many days, that there are many households that are exceeding the amount of occupants per dwelling. That is something that we need to take a look at, get a more structured ordinance so we can enforce it. Too many houses and homes across the city are exceeding a two-bedroom should not have 8, 10 occupants in there on a regular basis. And it's going on too much throughout the city. I don't pretend it's easy to get a handle on at the same time, but we need stronger ordinances, Mr. Manager. So could you please take a look at this in a future response to see, so to give us and inspectional services some legs and some teeth when they're out there and enforcing these properties, that there's ordinances in place for them. But it's a growing problem, and this property has it written all over it. We can see right through this guy what he's trying to do, and he's trying to do it in an unlawful manner by pulling a basic permit and exceeding the scope of his work, thinking he's a little cute. So this is an ongoing problem, Mr. Manager. I think it should be addressed. So if you could please take a look at the ordinance in specific, the amount of occupants per dwelling. What is it, so many square feet? What is it, and what are the codes and ordinances as it sit today, and let this council take a look and deliberate in the future. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council Samaras.
Thank you. I think last week there was we alluded to the people renting out to individuals, a bedroom. Slagle, Councilor Belanger was bringing that up, but the thing is, if anything's going to break down a neighborhood, that's what's going to break down the neighborhood. Sometimes an in-law apartment, you might have had one for legitimately, and then parents pass away, and you continue to rent it out, and I don't know what process took place to make sure it was correct. But the thing is, I think we have a major problem where people are renting out their bedrooms out to people and what have you. What can we do to stop this? And this seems to be a problem with this particular house. Do we have any legs at this particular point to prevent this?
I can tell you what the process...
It's a cancer growing. That's the way...
I can tell you what the process is when we do get a report of an illegal rooming house. Our inspectors go and they assess the exterior of the house to try to make a determination if there's more units than are legally allowed or that were grandfathered into the property. They make best efforts to access the common areas of the house and to access the house to make a determination as to whether or not there's indications in the property that the rooms are being rented out. Those indications should be things like bedrooms with separate locks on the bedrooms, bedrooms that had, hibachis or small cooking equipment in each individual bedrooms. Those are kind of the classic signs that they're renting out the individual rooms and not renting the property as a whole. When we find those signs, we do shut down the property immediately. The building department, Commissioner Shanahan and his staff take it very seriously. They shut down the property and require the owner to take steps to bring it into legal compliance, whether that is if it's in a zone that you can actually legally have a rooming house, to follow the proper procedure to become a rooming house. If it's not, to convert the property into a multifamily at whatever level is legally allowed. In this case, all indications were, based on our inspections, that the current owner purchased the property with the bedrooms already in the basement, so a prior owner had converted the property. The indications, again, based on the indications based on my inspectors were that it appeared as though the work in the basement was done longer than this person had owned the property, just based on appearances in the basement. But regardless, it was treated as a property that was being operated within a legal unit, and that unit was shut down. So we don't treat people differently based on when something was converted. And that does create some challenges because folks are buying properties without doing proper research to find out whether or not the units that they've been sold by a realtor are legal. So we often have to enter into those cases.
That's good, reasonable answers. We were made aware from these people made a presentation and talked about that. But if you're aware or you suspect that a home is being used as a rooming house, what right do you have to go into it? When do you have a right?
Depends on what kind of evidence that we have. It depends on the cooperation of the landlord. A landlord or a tenant can allow us into a building. So if a tenant allows us in or the landlord allows us in, we can do the investigation. Otherwise, we have to have sufficient evidence to get an administrative search warrant. That is, we'd have to go into housing court and convince a judge that we have enough evidence that there's some illegal use going on at the property to get into the building. That can be challenging.
Would that be neighbors willing to state that they've seen X amount of people going into the house?
Well,
it's not that, then.
Yeah, unfortunately, usually not. It usually has to be, I mean, if there are different numbers of meters, if there's 3 or 4 meters on the exterior of a building that's only supposed to be a 2-family building, that's an indication to us that there's illegal units. If we ascertain from the electric company that there are multiple accounts going for electric billing, or if we do, get into a common area and see locked doors indicating, more units than are allowed, but we can't get into those units to determine whether or not what their use is, that can give us sufficient evidence to get an administrative search warrant. So it's a very case-by-case
Thank you.
issue.
Council Leary.
Council Samaras, that's actually the question I was going to ask. I guess what creative ways you can do to really do that? I guess the only question I would have is is there something we can do as a council? We talk about ordinances. Is there something that we need to do to give you really the resources to be more effective? I guess really the neighbors, like in this case, you have a bunch of neighbors here, but other areas in the Highlands, this is something that neighbors have to speak up and get that information to us so we can actually begin the process. Or is there something else that I'm missing in terms of how to do it? Because I know what Councilor Belanger was saying in the Highlands, we got Harvard Street and some other areas that have been questioned too. We just aren't able to provide enough information to.
Actually, the zoning subcommittee is looking into that issue right now, especially as it relates to Airbnbs and occupants of buildings. So we'll be working with the zoning subcommittee to resolve some of these issues.
Council Leahy.
Quickly. So with some of these ordinances, we should probably be able to put out some heavy fines if people come to us and, I'm Mr. Slagle, I know how hard you work, so it's nothing personal, this stuff is personal to the neighborhood. But when people come and blatantly lie and say, well, there were bedrooms there when we got here, you don't know. But the neighbors can prove it. So we should put in the ordinance that there should be some hefty fines, because you can prove it by just going back to the person who sold the house and the realtor and letting people know what was there and what wasn't there. And we should be able to do that, so we'll have to look into that. That should be part of the ordinances.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion on this item? If not, we'll move on to the Lowell Stat Development Services Report. Any discussion? If not, we'll move on to the live auction results. Any discussion? Council Leahy.
I guess with I gotta gather my notes, but this is where we raised the money, right? Okay, so I just wanted to say that was everybody did a great job with that, and should be congratulated. There was a lot of money taken in. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question, Mr. Manager. So how long are these, I guess the winners of the bids, how long are they given to bring the properties back up to code or to get them back on track?
Well, they have 30 days to close. I don't think there's an exact time relative to bringing it up to code, is there, Christine?
Is it still the 60-day permit rule in order?
Yeah. But
It was a real sort of group effort, and DPD had weighed in on some of these properties, and we worked with the auctioneer to have as many sort of restrictions and guidelines as we could, but to still have an effective auction. So some of these properties, I believe, had a timetable, but we can check on that. Some of them definitely had certain improvements that needed to take place when you purchase the property.
And some of them were obviously worse than others. So, but does it
Some of them were worse than others, but some of them, being sensitive to the needs of the neighborhood, came with certain requirements so that when they purchase that property, they know that they have to do certain things to improve the property.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, the chair would entertain a motion to accept the communications from the manager and place them on file by Council Milonazo, seconded by Council Samaras. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, all opposed, so voted. Being shortly after 7 o'clock, we'll go back to the public hearing. We have one public hearing scheduled for today, which is, we'll do the second reading, which is to request the installation of an underground communication conduit at 42nd Street. Chair would open up the hearing for those who wish to speak in favor. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor?
Oh, did you say 42nd Street?
40 Andrews Street.
40 Andrews. Yes, I'm here. I'm the petitioner. So, hi, my name is Shelley Cullen. I'm with Axis Engineering Group, and I'm here on behalf of Cambridge Network Solutions, and they are looking to do an excavation across Andrews Street. It's about 71 feet, and their proposal is to go from an existing telephone pole to a private property manhole across the street.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak in favor?
Nicholas Bassanetto, interim city engineer, speaking in favor of this. This is actually to install four-inch conduits from the Markley Group property over to the communication pole so that they can finish the communications link.
Correct.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak in favor? In favor, in favor, in favor. Hearing none, we'll close the hearing on behalf of the proponents and open it up for those who wish to speak in opposition. Is there anybody who wishes to speak in opposition? In opposition, 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 hearing none, we'll close the hearing and open up to the City Council. Is there a motion to approve? Motion approved by Council, motion to refer to the wire inspector for report and recommendation by Council Rourke, seconded by Council Samaras. Discussion on the motion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. Thank you. Next, under communications from the city manager, we have the reappointment of Henry Marchand and Michael McGovern to the Taxi Cab and Livery Commission. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion approved by Council Leary, seconded by Council Milonazo. Discussion on the motion, roll call.
Council Mercia. Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Belanger.
Yes.
Council Elliott. Mayor
Yes.
Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Leary.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, we have a communication to reappoint Roland Cartier Jr. and Kyle Van to the Veterans Commission. We have a motion approved by Council Elliott, seconded by Council Leary. Discussion, roll call.
Council Mercia. Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Belanger.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Leary.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, we have a communication to reappoint Thel Saad to the Election Commission. Do we have a motion approved by Council Leary, seconded by Council Elliott? Discussion, roll call.
Counsel Mercia. Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, we have a request from the city manager to request out-of-state travel for one person from the library. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion approved by Counsel Milonazo, second by Counsel Leary. Discussion on the motion, roll call.
Counsel Mercia. Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
That's 8 yeas.
Next, we have a vote authorizing the city manager to exercise an easement agreement between the city and the UMBA regarding Alasha Park. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full first reading and go to the second reading, authorizing the city manager to execute an easement agreement between the city of Lowell and the University of Massachusetts Building Authority regarding Alasha Park, as the city intends to improve the lighting and field turf as well as the maintenance of the park thereafter, as shown on the plans. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion approved by Counsel Milonazo, second by Counsel Rourke. Discussion on the motion, roll call.
Counsel Mercia. Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, we have a vote to authorize the city manager to execute an easement with the city and the UMBA and UML portion of Pawtucket Street and Salem Street. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full first reading and go to the second reading, authorizing the city manager to execute a maintenance easement between the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, acting by and through the University of Massachusetts at Lowell and the University of Massachusetts Building Authority and the city of Lowell, located within certain parcels of land situated on the southerly side of Salem Street and the southerly side of Pawtucket Street in the city of Lowell. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion approved by Counsel Samaras, second by Counsel Milonazo. Discussion on the motion, roll call.
Counsel Mercia. Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, we have a vote authorizing the city manager to execute an easement from the city to the UML Broadway Street and Pawtucket Street. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full first reading and go to the second reading, authorizing the city manager to execute a proposed maintenance easement between the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, acting by and through the University of Massachusetts at Lowell and the city of Lowell, located within the rights-of-way of Pawtucket Street and Broadway Street, located at the southerly sideline of Broadway in the easterly sideline of Pawtucket Street in the city of Lowell. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion approved by Counsel Belanger, second by Counsel Leahy. Discussion on the motion, roll call.
Counsel Mercia. Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, we have a vote authorizing the city manager to execute a memorandum of understanding between the Boston Surface Railroad Company Incorporated. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full first reading and go to the second reading, authorizing the city manager to execute a memorandum of understanding between the Boston Surface Railroad Company Incorporated and the city of Woonsocket, Rhode Island, in the city of Nashua, New Hampshire, the city of Worcester, Massachusetts, and the city of Lowell, relative to identifying the proposed roles and responsibilities of each party as they relate to the establishment of regional intercity passenger rail operated by the BSRC between points in and between the municipal limits of the other parties. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion to approve by Counsel Milonazo, second by Counsel Leahy. Counsel Leahy.
Through you to the manager, could you just explain what this is again? Just a brief.
I think Councilor Milonazo would be best to explain what this is.
We do, if I could, through the mayor, we do have Vincent Bono here, who is actually with the Boston Surface Railroad Company, and he'd be happy to answer questions, and I certainly appreciate him being here this evening. But I was actually invited to a meeting with UMass Lowell and Mr. Bono to talk about the city of Lowell getting involved with the other cities that are mentioned in this vote this evening. I think it's a good opportunity to actually get transportation from, say, Bedford, Manchester, New Hampshire down and through Lowell, and also get some upgrades, again, in cooperation with the LRTA. The bottom line here is that I think we should be at the table. The manager should appoint someone to work with those other communities and see if we can identify the roles and responsibilities to bring about this private endeavor. So if there's no objection, Mr. Bono is here to answer questions.
So this is to extend the rail from Lowell? Okay. So my main question would be, and if you haven't guessed yet, If we're gonna allow this, why can't we open up,
Pan Am,
no, yeah, why can't we open up the street to go from downtown Lowell over to, and I'm drawing a blank here, because the Western Ave, because that's an important connection for us. So does this relate to this? And
I don't believe it does relate to that
what's
at
the
all.
difference with your company and the P&M?
Well, Pan Am is a rail holder and a freight railroad. We're only authorized to carry passengers by the Fed.
But using the same line, right?
Depending on who owns the particular who the particular host railroad is where we want to go, it's different operators along the route. There's virtually no new construction in our plan. So and we are strictly intercity, not intra-city. So we're not rapid transit or anything like that.
All right, because those rail lines don't look very good over there. So if you had to fix them, there could be some construction, probably.
Not new construction. Sometimes we call it repair.
All right, well, we'll work on that, Mr. Manager. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counsel Mercia. Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, we have a vote authorizing the city manager to execute a license agreement for an overhanging awning at Minus Lunch Corporation at 191 Appleton Street. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full first reading, go to the second reading, authorizing the city manager to enter into a license agreement with Minus Lunch Corporation to encroach upon the City of Lowell property at 191 Appleton Street in Lowell, Mass. Do we have a motion to approve? A motion approved by Counsel Rourke, seconded by Counsel Milonazo. Discussion on the motion. Roll call.
Counsel Mercia. Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, we have an ordinance amending zoning at various sections. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full first reading, and the chair would entertain a motion to refer the matter to the planning board for report and recommendation and to a public hearing on December 5th, 2017 at 7 p.m. Motion by Counsel Belanger to that effect, second by Counsel Leary. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, all opposed, so voted. Next, on the subcommittee reports, the Economic Development Subcommittee, Councilor Samaras.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. President was the subcommittee, Councilor Milonazo, Councilor Leary, also Councilor Belanger was present. The city manager talked about, which he's talked in the past, about the Hamilton Canal project and other projects that are in the city. And it was a very nice presentation because it talks in a very positive manner as to what is happening in the city of Lowell. He talked about the Judicial Center, which everybody can see with the steel going up, and it seems to be ahead of schedule, originally for December of 2019. Now it's at least September of 2019, so it's slowly going ahead of schedule, and this is exciting. Talked about 1,200 people utilizing the Judicial Center, and this will be quite an incentive for smaller companies to restaurants and boutiques, perhaps, to build near the Judicial Center. He talked about parcel 2 and 4 that was Genesis originally, and when Genesis turned their program away and just we're going to make it into a nursing home, we now have Sal Poli and David Heller, who are looking to build a 20-story high-rise of mixed use. And he feels that this is well on its way to being developed. 110 Canal Place, as we all know, which has belonged to the university, and they've occupied floor 3 and 4 since most of us have been on the city council the past 4 years. Now they've now rented the space of floors 1 and 2 with a $2 million grant that the university's received, and it looks like some exciting dealings will go on there. Parcels 8 and 9 are going to Wind Development, and Wind Development also met with the city manager today. And they also talked about the 10,000 square feet of commercial space that will be placed in there. Parcel 5, S&R Construction is planned to build a 4-story retail and commercial building. Then across the canal, Mass Works and EDA, federal grant, they're working to develop the infrastructure, and Watermark is ready, as soon as that infrastructure is developed, to build hopefully a $15 to $20 million building. He spoke about the many also restaurants. There's at least 6 new downtown restaurants that opened up recently in the downtown. Talked about Lavoie Industries expanding in the downtown. Talked about bringing in and working with the New England Networks, their purchase of the Howe building. Celebrated the move of Scheid Bachman, one of the largest providers of fare collections and parking solutions in the United States, to Cross River Center. And they're expanding to include more than 100 new jobs. It's exciting just to hear what is going on in that area. One of the things that the city manager brought up, working with he also talked about Boston Chowder, that was planning to leave, but with the ability to offer them a TIF and certain other arrangements, and their immediate response to Boston Chowder will stay in Lowell with a $4 million reconstruction of their place. Talked about Macon and its expansion. We don't hear too much about Macon, but they're a solid company. They have 173,000 square feet of office space on Chelmsford Street, 60,000 square feet on Hale, and they're now preparing to build their $15 million office center, and it looks like they'll be creating at least 40 new jobs within the next year at Macon. So these are the things that we want to hear. One of the things he talked about, which I thought was very, very important, was in working with the delegation, there is a program called Transformative District Initiative. And this is with the state. And the hope of that is for us to obtain that grant. And that grant would allow us to hire what they call a TDI fellow. And these are people who are usually experienced developers, people who've been in the trades for a number of years. And what their job, if we get this grant, it'll be a 3-year grant, correct, Mr. Manager, to come into the city of Lowell with the skills to act as a developer. And part of the grant is that they only work within, what did you say, a quarter-mile or mile district?
That's preferred. It shouldn't be a whole downtown or a whole neighborhood. It should be like a quarter-mile district to limit it.
Which basically is the Hamilton Canal area. So this can actually, in a sense, replace or alleviate our fears in regard to having a developer. We'll have our own developer. This would allow you as the manager to work on these projects, but to have a person with developmental skills as a developer to help sell these properties. So it's kind of exciting. Can you just expand a little more on this for the?
Yeah, I have to thank the delegation, Senator Donahue, Representative Golden, Representative Nagel, Representative Mumm. I've been working with them. This is a mass development proposal. It's called a Transformative District Initiative. What we're going to do is we're going to put in an application, and we're going to take the Hamilton Canal Innovation District and the Jam area, and we're going to designate that as our transformative district. And then there's a group of fellows that we can interview and pick who have experience in planning and development in real estate and law, and they can come and work for us at the expense of mass development for 3 years and promote the Hamilton Canal Innovation District and the Jam area.
No, thank you. You actually painted a very good picture, but you also painted a realistic picture, because you're talking about companies that already, are starting to develop their programs or their properties in this city. So thank you for that. And we look forward to that project being successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Is there any further discussion regarding the report of the subcommittee? If not, the chair would entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress by Councilor Samaras, seconded by Councilor Larry. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, all opposed. So voted. Next, under petitions, we have one petition for requesting that the City Council approve an overhanging sign at 144 Merrimack Street. Chair would entertain a motion to refer it to the Law Department for report and recommendation by Councilor Rourke, seconded by Councilor Milonazo. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, all opposed. So voted. Next, we have a request for permission to install an underground conduit at the manhole at 43 Market Street. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full first reading, and the chair would entertain a motion to refer this to a public hearing on November 14th, 2017 at 7 p.m. That motion by Councilor Larry, seconded by Councilor Belanger. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, all opposed, so voted. The next three items are all from National Grid, and if there's no objection, we'll bundle those together. And the chair would entertain a motion to refer those to a public hearing also on November 14th, 2017 at 7 p.m. We have a motion to that effect by Councilor Rourke, seconded by Councilor Milonazo. I'll just read them quickly. Request permission to install one pole at the corner of Pawtucket Street and Merrimack Streets. Request permission to install one stub pole and anchor at 590 Pine Street. And request permission to install one pole and 10 feet of conduit at East Merrimack Street and Park Street. I'm sorry, in 9.6, so there's 4 of them altogether. Request permission to install one pole and 30 feet of conduit at 357 Pawtucket Street. Any discussion on the motion to refer these? Hearing none, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. Next on the City Council motions, we have item 10.2 is a motion by Councilor Samaras. Request that the City Manager initiate an application to the Massachusetts Cultural Facilities Fund through the Massachusetts Cultural Council and the Massachusetts Development to enhance the presence of public art and lighting in the city and to expand these efforts into the city's neighborhoods for the coming year. Seconded by Councilor Rourke. Councilor Samaras.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Manager, too. I mean, I think this is an exciting time. You know, many members of this City Council have been pushing for, you know, more development of the arts and, you know, increased support, actually, of the arts. But in this year, I think we've got an opportunity. In November, the Mass Cultural Facilities Fund will accept a letter of intent for another funding round. This is money administered through the Mass Cultural Council and Mass Development. Applications would be due in January. Technical assistance grants up for $50,000 and capital grants starting at $250,000. They will require a one-to-one private match. The city and many private individuals and businesses have raised significant funds for some very exciting projects, such as the lighting of the Cox Bridge, lighting of the Canalway at Lucy Larkin Park, and several other public art activities. The city at this point may have a good opportunity with this application to advance its public art planning, especially including the younger artist generation. This also might give Lowell an opportunity to consider including some of the neighborhoods in this public art planning. An example might be involving the Bridge Street business and residents in the Cox Bridge and Winterfest celebration and extend some public art in the Centerville neighborhood. I would like to request, Mr. Manager, that you assign someone from an appropriate department to investigate exploring this opportunity for city art and cultural planning. This, Mr. Manager, is, I think, an opportunity. With your help, we did the Lucy Larkin Park lighting program. We have now, we're waiting for the lighting of the Cox Bridge, and we have many other pieces of public art in this city. But if there's a possibility with this grant to go into the neighborhoods, to bring this art work into the neighborhoods, I think this will strengthen the city a great deal. So I'd hope you'd be able to have someone that could give us assistance in looking to fund this grant, or looking to prepare this grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor of the motion, all opposed, so voted. The next motion is by Councilor Leary. Request that the city manager provide a report regarding the Department of Public Works usage of chemical application when treating the roads before, during, and after storms. The report should include the costs associated with the implementation and recommendations of saving costs. Seconded by Council Leahy. Council Leary.
Just quickly, 10.4 and 10.5 could have been one motion, so I apologize. They're essentially the same information. You know, I live in a neighborhood with DPW directors of other communities. They're looking at cost savings of looking at these different programs. And I think if we can take a look at a report in terms of how we're utilizing our current process, ways of looking at saving money in that would be a good thing. And I'm not going to talk on 10.5. It has to do with contractors, but it's the same idea. If we get that information, take a look at it, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I hate to say this, but I think it's a good time to have the DPW commissioner come in and give a report about what he plans for the upcoming winter. So that will, as part of the responses to these motions, I'll have him in to give a presentation on what we're going to do for the winter.
And if anything we could look at in terms of doing it differently, I know a lot of times you're looking at how you apply it, how the contractors are applying it, would be good information, because there's ways of other communities are looking at things that's saving money on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor of the motion, all opposed, so voted. The next motion is by Council Leary. Request that city manager provide a report regarding the number of contractors used to treat roads before, during, and after storms. Report to include the use of GPS, GIS technology, the amount of product each contractor vehicle applies on the roads, the costs associated with the implementation recommendations for saving costs. Seconded by Council Leahy.
Just
No
the
discussion on the
aforementioned,
motion.
yeah.
All in favor, all opposed, so voted. The next motion is by Council Leary. Request that the city manager provide an update regarding the discussion with Circle Health as it relates to reaching a pilot agreement with the city of Lowell. Seconded by Council Leahy. Council Leary.
Just quickly, this is a motion follow-up that Councilor Elliott and I had put on like a couple of times, and we want to see exactly, are there really meaningful negotiations, or is it just, we don't have to do it, we're not going to be bothered with it. I think getting information on that is one of the largest employers in the city, one of the largest pieces of property in the city, which I think is valued, I think it's $1 million or 1.1, and we're getting zero in terms of tax dollars, is something that's a problem, especially when we're looking at a lot of challenges in terms of not only the high school, but police station, another fire station, what have you, turnout gear, other types of stuff that are imperative for our workers as well as our taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor of the motion, all opposed, so voted. The next motion is by Council Leary. Request that the city manager review the feasibility of changing the direction of traffic over the Howe, Willette, and Rourke bridges one-way during peak driving periods in an effort to determine if this would improve traffic congestion. Seconded by Council Leahy. Council Leary.
I didn't want to make, I know it's almost a funny motion, why would you do it? But I think ultimately, the more you think about it, it actually might make sense in some cases, because some of these bridges are not having traffic in one direction going over. So it might be something, it's a fool's errand, but you never know. It might come back with some information that actually proves of benefit. It did come from a constituent. I hesitated putting it on myself, but the more I looked at it, and the more the information, I think it is worth taking a quick look at. I think it's interesting. One of the best things I've ever heard on the city council in terms of the Rourke Bridge came from Councilor Milanazzo about getting actually another erector lane, as it were, put up. This is not as, I guess, creative as that, but it ultimately has something with using the current infrastructure. It may not work, it may not be feasible, but just if we could take a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, all opposed, so voted. Mr. Manager.
Yes, we only have one item next week that I know of, and it's not an emergency item. It could be taken up for the following week, so there's a very light agenda planned for next Tuesday, and I just wanted to inform the council of that.
Council Leary.
In the spirit of Halloween, and then I have a 10-year-old, I'd make a motion that we cancel the meeting on Halloween.
We have a motion to cancel next week's meeting by Council Leary, seconded by Council Leahy and Council Belanger and Council Milanazzo and Council Rogan, Council Samaras and Council Elliott. Everybody but me. Anyways, all in favor of the motion, all opposed, so voted. That concludes the agenda. Are there any, Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to ask the suspension of the rules to my colleagues relative to the attack that took place over the weekend. Knowing that there wasn't time to file a motion within that time.
Great. Councilor Elliott is requesting suspension of the rules. If there's no objection, we'll do that by general consent. Hearing no objection, Councilor Elliott, you wanted to make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we had a moment of silence at the beginning of this meeting, and appropriately so, for the little boy, the 7-year-old boy that that was tragically killed over the weekend. I want the public to know a couple of things. Number one, the city has reached out to the family. Mr. Manager, can you just, I know you've reached out to the family, and the city is doing everything that we can. I think it's important for people to know exactly, what we are, what we have done, what we're planning to do to help this family, knowing that they don't have the money for funeral expenses.
Correct. I, myself, Deputy Superintendent Kelly Richardson, and Sergeant Nobrega, last evening went to the home of the mother on Clare Street. Understandably, she wasn't available, but I was able to speak to the godmother of the young man, and I expressed the condolences of the City Council and my administration. I gave her my business card, and I said, make sure that if the family needs anything, the City Council and myself are here to help. I know that Morse Bayless Funeral Home is doing the arrangements at no cost, and I've told the family, rest assured that we will provide a proper burial spot for no charge whatsoever. So we have reached out, and we will continue to follow up to try and contact the mother and make sure that she's comfortable.
I think that's important to let the public know that this is what we are doing as a community, and all of my colleagues in the entire city, we're mourning this tragic loss for this family. To me, this should never happen again. And I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Manager, something that needs to be done, and that we refer, this issue to you. This council went through months, and I think even years, to adopt an ordinance that was overturned and superseded in 2012. I'd like to know exactly what remains of our ordinance that was adopted in 2011, after it was superseded by the state law. I think it's important. Secondly, as part of that report, I think it's also important to know, what can we do? What do we have at our disposal as a city to prevent this from ever happening again? Third, and I know that the law, the amendment that was passed, amending the animal control law, to me is a very broad law, and it's not just other communities. There are a dozen other communities, including many across the Cape, that that had ordinances on the book. But also, I think that we should also reactivate the Animal Control Commission, I believe it was, or committee. I think one of the two, committee or commission, to look at the process and exactly what we can do. So I think that's important to move forward. What are the options to give jurisdictions to those communities that may want to adopt specific ordinances, like the city of Boston and Whitman and Malden and Lynn, that had them in place? And what are they doing as a result of this? If you look at statistics, they're on the rise. And so that's the motion. It's more important, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and my colleagues for indulging this. I think it's important to know that the little boy, we lost a life in the city, and at the same time, just referring this to the city manager.
We have a motion as stated by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Milonazo. Further discussion on the motion, Councilor Milonazo.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate Councilor Elliott bringing this forward. We did work very hard a few years ago through an animal advisory committee, and we did work with the Solicitor's Office, and sitting behind me, we have representatives from the Lowell Humane Society and from the Massachusetts Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, and they did submit a letter to the mayor and to the members of this council where they feel that we should reestablish, as Councilor Elliott indicated, the Animal Advisory Committee, and that they would be in a position to help us, come up with some ideas as to how to strengthen and provide more effective laws, actually looking at the existing laws and what changes could possibly be made. So if you don't have this letter, it's actually addressed to the mayor, vice chair Dan Rourke, and the members of the city council. I will certainly give this to the city clerk and enter it into the official minutes of these meetings. But the fact that we do have a willingness from the Humane Society, the MSPCA, as well as the Massachusetts State Director of the Humane Society of the United States, willing to work with us, work with the Animal Advisory Committee going forward to come up with what, as Councilor Elliott said, something has to be done, tougher laws. So again, I will give this to the clerk for his record. So I certainly support the motion.
Okay, thank you, Council Milonazo. Council Samaras?
Thank you. I support the motion also. I think, when we think of some of these things, we look at, you had an ordinance in the past and the state put it down. Quite often when we talk to the city solicitor, it's very difficult to design a plan that meets all the standards. But I think we have to use another way of thinking about this. This happened to a 7-year-old child. And a 7-year-old child should be relatively safe in the city of Lowell. And what do I mean by relatively safe? I mean, no one can guarantee perfect safety. But the issue is, in this plan, we should look at not only how we're dealing with the issue with the dogs or the animal control or what have you, but what do we do as a city to ensure that our children, especially our very young children, are safe? And so the thing is, when we're looking at changing laws or doing something, what's the reason? Who's the audience? And the audience really is everybody, but at this point, when you're talking about adults, if they see a sign, dangerous animal or something like that, they know to not go near it. The 7-year-old child, these are things, no matter how bright they are, they think as a 7-year-old child or a 6-year-old child, and they can put themselves in harm's way and we had a horrific accident here to show that what can happen, and no one should have to face something like this. I think this is one of the worst stories I've ever heard, or most horrific in a long time, as to what happened to a young boy in the prime of life. So I think, Mr. Manager, just in how we apply our thinking, but it's for what purpose, and I think hopefully we can get some mileage with that, just how we do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, all opposed, so voted. There's any announcements?
I wanted just to announce that the Lowell Junior Football League will be having a game between the 7th, 8th grade white team and maroon team, 2 Lowell teams, this Sunday, October 29th, down at South Common. So football's back down at South Common. It's exciting. The winner of this game will actually play in their league championship. So it's a pretty exciting game. I also want to thank the Parks Department and Tom Bellegarde for doing an excellent job of lining the field. Actually got a giant football in the middle of the field with a big L on it. Very cool. But I think it's interesting. The council put a lot of effort into beginning rehabbing South Common and bringing it to a state art facility. Got a little bit more way to go. Hopefully, Mr. Manager, we can obtain more grants and make that really a place for folks that'll be proud of. So I think, check out, if you like football, you want to check out some young gentlemen playing, please come on out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further announcements? If not, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn by Council Rourke, second by Council Samaras. All in favor, all opposed, stand adjourned.